It's been slightly more than a year since I started this YouTube channel, and ever since I've done some amazing stuff. I uploaded 72 videos, spoke in Watford, St. Louis, and attended a symposium in Boston. I've almost finished my 4th book, for which blurbs are now forthcoming. I'm still waiting on 2 more. With roughly 650 subscribers, I'm really proud of what has been achieved in the last year. You know, if you want to help me grow this channel even more, share these videos, like them, and if you haven't already, subscribe. My first video was a response to Robert Llewellyn's Fully Charged video. Fully Charged is a YouTube channel predominantly aimed at giving people the lowdown on battery electric vehicles. Do note that I don't hate BEVs, I just have some serious reservations about their prospects and the way we get some of the materials required to make them. Will they disrupt the future in personal vehicular transport? I don't know. Robert Llewellyn himself, I presume, wrote a response to my video. Let's break it down piece by piece. Robert, we've had some discussion before if you remember our Twitter conversations. My name is Matthijs Beckers. I am an admirer of your channel. I really liked the recent episode in the e-bike dungeon. I myself own an e-bike, by the way, a Gazelle. I think that electric cars and renewable energy are great, and we should pursue them with all haste, but that's the issue. From my calculations and the calculations of other experts, the renewable drumbeat is nothing but hubris that must be deflated as soon as possible because it is keeping us from turning down the dials on coal, gas, oil, and biomass. I don't say this because I am a nuclear supporter per se, although I must admit that I, like you, am a huge technology freak. And there's also a lot of stuff in nuclear that deserves to be highlighted positively and should become a reason for people like you to become far more optimistic about nuclear energy in general. But here's the thing, and I am going to respond to your arguments point by point. It is simple. Magnox reactors are being paid by the taxpayer. Everything else in nuclear is mostly the ratepayer and a smidgen of taxpayer. Even for decommissioning costs, those are borne by those who pay for the juice coming out of their wall socket. It is part of the total electricity price. Indeed, and that's a good thing. We've now learned that the effects from these meltdowns are relatively low in scope and severity. The Pripyat exclusion zone turned out to be unnecessary, but in the end, we got one of the most beautiful natural areas back for it. Nature has won in Pripyat. Apart from the babushkas who still live there, we now have great wildlife like European elk, wolves, wild boar, and wild horses living in that area. In the end, these accidents have taught us how to make nuclear energy more reliable and how to keep plants operational longer. But do note that I don't say make nuclear energy more safe, because it is already safe. Even those accidents doesn't change anything about it. The number of people killed by these accidents pales in contrast with any other energy source. We also learned which types of reactors to build and which ones to shut down. Now we are seeing a renaissance. True, the EPR currently being built at Hinkley C was a misfire of that same renaissance, and the AP1000s in the US are a financial disaster, but these reactors will offset millions upon millions of tons of carbon dioxide otherwise emitted in coal or gas-fired power stations. We should now be aware that we can build these reactors for a fraction of their current cost. These reactors were so-called first-of-a-kind projects. The lessons learned during these projects should be implemented to ensure cheaper builds in the future. In fact, Michael Schellenberger's so-called 7 secrets to cheap nuclear power are spot on. Add to these the advent of the molten salt reactor and the pebble bed reactor, and we may very well become much more optimistic about nuclear reactors. One of the dumbest things ever done by the industry is throwing away stuff that can be used in other reactors. Apart from it being very poor practice, I think they have learned from it a great deal. Nowadays, every ounce of nuclear material is accounted for, except for some of the tritium that has a nasty habit of leaking out of facilities in some way or another. But that stuff is completely harmless. We ingest it daily as it is ubiquitous in nature anyway. As for the storage of spent nuclear fuel, that's a total non-issue, which is also being paid for during the operation of the plant by the electricity that is being sold. Which is neither bad nor good. I think that energy is a collective issue. We should plan worldwide how we produce and consume energy. Our problems are much bigger than the stuff that comes out of our wall sockets. In fact, that's less than 20% of our total energy problem. We are talking about everything from water to food to medicine to homes to services, etc. None of that gets decarbonized without energy. Energy that is in short supply as it is, and which keeps being satiated with coal, gas, and oil, whether you or I like it or not. That's not true. The death print per kilowatt hour of solar and wind are higher than nuclear. So taken together, it is a lot more unsafe than you think. You can consult James Conca on this matter. Also, nuclear, wind, and solar have been priced artificially. When we consider nuclear costs in South Korea or China, it is much cheaper than anything else. Here it is the inverse because we treat it very poorly, as in we don't understand how to make it work effectively. The European pressurized reactor, for instance, is a great reactor, but ungodly expensive in Finland and England. Once these first reactors have been completed, a thorough investigation must be done to learn from what has gone wrong here. We're not going to make it if we single out either technology. Besides, you should be well aware that a 200 megawatt offshore wind farm just as well as a multi-billion single power plant project, or a 500 megawatt grid-scale PV plant like Topaz is also a multi-billion dollar single power plant, $2.4 billion to be precise. It's also a power plant with a gazillion breakage points, but with very little practical economic value once it's built because nobody has to work there save a handful. If you consult any serious 100% renewable plan, like the Solutions Project by Mark C. Jacobson, you see that it requires a tripling of both short and long distance power grid connections. So this argument is moot. Everything requires a grid unless you intend to live off-grid, which is a luxury very few can afford. I would love to help you understand these questions better. I'm always available for the possibility to elaborate on the many misconceptions surrounding nuclear energy. This brings us to the end of this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to visit my Patreon page if you're interested in supporting the channel. Also, I want to thank Ambrose for his very generous contribution. At the end of this video, I'll share some of the blurbs I've gotten so far. Be on the lookout for my newest book, Climate 0 Hour, which will be available in a couple of weeks. Thank you all for watching and have a nice day.